Welcome to this short video on the Winter Mountain Leader registration process. So in this video, we're going to look at three separate areas. We're going to look at the registration process, so the stages that you need to go through to register for the Winter Mountain Leader. We're going to look at winter quality mountain days and the information that Mountain Training Scotland need to see and what might and might not count as a winter quality mountain day. And then we'll finish off with just a little bit of admin around the digital logbook and exactly the information that Mountain Training Scotland need to see so that we can go through your days and check that they're quality and therefore process your registration. We've split the video into those three sections, and in the description or in the timeline at the bottom of the video, you'll see that you can fast forward to each section or obviously go back and review sections as and when you need. So we'll start with the stages to register for your Winter Mountain Leader. So 6 steps. Step 1 here is that you have current experience of walking in winter conditions in at least 3 different UK and Ireland mountain areas. So what do we mean by current experience? I think within the last 3 to 5 years would be current. And that doesn't mean that you're going to have all of your days, all 20 days within the last 3 years. What we're saying is you need a handful, 4, 5, 6 days at a minimum in the last 3 years, and that you have been to historically at least 3 different areas, mountain areas in the UK and Ireland in your logbook. So if you don't have that experience, then yeah, it's fairly simple. Get out and go winter walking, and ideally in Scotland. Why is that requirement there? Really, it's there to help you gain the most from your Winter Mountain Leader training. The more experience you have within the last 3 years, the more you're going to gain from your training course. Stage 2 is that you need to be well practiced in personal use of ice axe and crampons. So the Winter Mountain Leader training and the qualification in general is not a personal skills course. It's very much a course. On the training course, you'll look at how to introduce ice axe and crampons to other people, how to manage other people, clients in steeper terrain, how to manage them in adverse conditions. So the focus will very much be around leadership and looking after other people rather than your own personal skills. So the more experience and the higher skilled you are in the use of ice axe and crampons, then the more, again, you will gain from your training course. If you're at all unsure of your skill levels or you want to top up, then we thoroughly recommend you go on a preparation course and hire a qualified instructor to help you get ready. Step 3 is knowing what a winter quality mountain day is. We're not going to go into that in detail because we cover that in the next section. Step 4 is making sure that you have an absolute minimum of 20 winter quality mountain days logged, ideally on D-Log or uploaded into the file section. They need to be digital. We can only register you if we see 20 winter quality mountain days. And again, we'll discuss that more in the next section of this video. But what that does mean, if you submit your logbook with 20 days entered, and we decide that 2 of those 20 days are not quality, that takes you down to 18, and we cannot register you for your Winter Mountain Leader. So having 20 would be an absolute minimum. We'd certainly recommend having a few more than 20 days just to give you a bit of wiggle room. Step 5 is paying your registration fee. So this is a one-off registration fee for the Winter Mountain Leader, just the same as you will have done for your Mountain Leader. It's fairly simple to do. You go to the website for mountain training, go onto the Winter Mountain Leader page, and then click the register button there. That will take you through to your CMS account, and you can register for the Winter Mountain Leader. That's not the end though, because step 6 is submitting your digital logbook to mountain training. So we don't know, once you've registered, we don't know that you want us to look at your experience. Yeah, and your registration is not complete until your experience has been reviewed by one of the Mountain Training Scotland technical staff, and they have processed your registration. So you need to share your D-log with us. It's fairly simple. Again, log on to your mountain training account in CMS, go to your D-log section, and in the D-log section, there is a share tab. There's two options here. One is to send to a specific email address. The other is to send to Mountain Training. You just click the Send to Mountain Training button. That will automatically send Mountain Training Scotland an email asking us to review your logbook, which we will do. So we've looked at the stages for registering. Obviously, there's often a lot of questions around what constitutes a winter quality mountain day. And I think the best place to start really is this here. This is lifted straight from the handbook. So all of the following criteria should be fulfilled in your quality mountain day. So the individual takes part in planning and leadership. So they're not under instruction, they're not observing another leader, they're not assisting a qualified leader, they're part of the planning and leadership decision-making process. Navigation skills are going to be required away from marked and well-used paths. Now, hopefully in winter, all the footpaths are covered in snow. But what this also means is away from well-used paths, that's going to be, trails that are stamped out in the snow. So you're not just following someone else's footprints. You're going to be up or off the beaten track in the mountainous areas. What it means also is that following a track into the base of a corrie is unlikely to count as a quality mountain day because you're not using your navigational skills there. The experience must be in terrain, weather, and conditions comparable to that found in the UK and Irish mountain terrain in true winter conditions. You can have some days outside of the UK and Ireland, but those days would have to be in similar terrain, weather, and conditions that you'd find in the UK and Irish mountains in winter conditions. So days in the Alps, whilst you might be using crampons and ice axe, you'd probably be crossing glacial terrain, which isn't found in the UK and Ireland. And certainly in summer, the weather and the conditions aren't going to be comparable. So those would unlikely to count as a quality mountain day. Knowledge is increased and skills are practiced. Attention is paid to safety. Hopefully that happens every time you head out and about in the mountains. The journey is 5 hours or more. So 5 hours would be deemed as a minimum. If we think of a day out in the hills, 5 hours is 9 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which is a fairly short day. And on your training course, on your assessment, and then most likely once you've qualified, your days are going to be longer than that, more around the 8-hour mark. So we'd certainly recommend that you have a good chunk of your days up and around the 8-hour. Ascent of a substantial peak would normally be included in the day. This doesn't mean you have to every single time go up a major peak. If you were in the Cairngorms or on the Craigmeggy Plateau or the Mona Leith, you might spend the majority of the day up around 900 meters, 1,000 meters. You might not actually visit a peak, but you're going to be in high mountainous terrain. Conversely, it also means that a day where you might walk into the base of a corrie, even if that corrie is around 900 meters high, 1,000 meters high, and you just spend time in the corrie practicing bucket seats and rope work, then that's unlikely to count because you're not up in high mountainous terrain, you're not practicing your navigational skills, and so on. And then finally, an ice axe and crampons are likely to be required. You don't necessarily have to use them, but you're certainly going to leave the car with them in the morning thinking that you'll most likely need them. If you leave the car or the transport, or wherever you're starting the day, and thinking that you won't need ice axe and crampons for the day, then it's unlikely to be a winter quality mountain day. A few other questions that we sometimes get around quality mountain days. Does winter climbing count? No. This is a walking and journeying award, not a climbing award. So climbing days aren't going to count, really. There might be times, a minority of times, where certain days out where you do some climbing might count. The best way to think about this is that if you took out the climbing sections of your day, does what remains, does that count? Would that count as a quality mountain day? Does it meet the criteria that you found on the page earlier? So you might head into Corrie-yn-Schnechter, go up Aladdin's Couloir, cross the plateau, go down Wye Gully, traverse around from the base of Wye Gully, go up into Corrie-Duvan, out over Cairnlochan and down the west ridge of Lochan. Now, if we took out the short sections there of Aladdin's Couloir and Wye Gully, that would most likely still count as a winter quality mountain day. Whereas if you walked into, say, the north face of Ben Nevis on a well-marked track and went into the CIC hut and then up to, say, climb the Curtain, which might be certainly considerably harder technically than our first example, and then descended and went back to the car. Well, if we took out the climbing of the Curtain as part of the day, you've not really ticked the boxes from the previous slide. So that wouldn't count as a quality mountain day. You certainly want, if you've got any climbing in there that you think might count as quality mountain days, then they want to be a real minority. You know, they don't want to be a major part of your logbook. It's a walking and journeying. Does skiing count? No, there's a separate qualification process to lead other people on skis. You're going to react to the terrain. You're going to interpret the terrain. You're going to navigate differently. You're going to manage the avalanche risk in a different way. So they're not really helping develop your knowledge and your experience around winter walking. So they're not going to count. Days under instruction and observing and assisting, no, they're not going to count because you're not going to be part of the decision-making process that's mentioned in the slide earlier. Days abroad, like we said earlier, it depends. And then finally, repeats. Do these count? Sort of yes and no. It might be the repeat of a mountain, but you might have ascended it in a completely different way. And really, the only repeat there is a little bit on the summit. So that would count. Whereas a repeat up, the same route or almost the same route, well, that's not going to count. It might be different conditions underfoot, but in reality, you're not developing your depth and breadth of experience as much as you could. And then finally for this, just thinking about the scope of the award. So if you've still got questions in your head about, is it a quality mountain day or isn't it? Think about what the award's for. The Winter Mountain Leader is a walking award. It's a journeying award, leading other people on foot in the mountains. So if your quality days aren't equivalent to that, then they're unlikely to count as quality days for your registration or assessment. So to finish off with then, the last little section is a little bit of sort of housekeeping around the digital logbook and what we'd like to see. So first of all, 1 day per entry. which just makes our life easier to count. So when you add a day or add an entry into the digital logbook, you can select the length of time it took from a few hours up to 8+ hours through to 2 days, 3 days, and so on. You can add it like that. It just makes our life and your assessor's life a little bit easier if you just add a day at a time. So one entry, one day. Now, obviously, if you're on a multi-day trip, then day 2 will just start not from the car, but potentially from the bothy, from the snow hole, from the campsite, whatever it is. Please remember to correctly click the right type of day, whether it's a quality mountain day or a non-quality day. Add in all the information you want, or all the days you want, but please only call the days quality if they meet the requirements. One of the first things that we'll do when we're reviewing logbooks is we'll just filter. So we'll filter winter walking and then filter it to quality mountain days, and we'll start from there. And then just have an understanding of the styles of the day. So there are a number of choices here. Solo is fairly self-explanatory. Equals could be with friends, could be with peers. Leader supervisor, when you're leading a group who maybe are slightly less experienced than you. An assistant leader is when you're assisting a qualified leader, be it a winter mountain leader or a winter mountaineering climbing instructor. And these days are unlikely to count for quality mountain days because it comes back to that being part of the decision-making process. Group member, we reserve that for when you're under instruction. So you might take part in a preparation course or an avalanche awareness course. You can log that. Not going to count as a quality mountain day because you're under instruction. And then technical advice obviously isn't really relevant to the winter mountain leader. It's just one of the options. So we've just covered it here. So the information that we require, this is obviously a copy of a D-log entry. The information here on the left-hand side pretty much self-populates. You'll click on the various boxes. One of the areas that is useful for us is if you know and you summited certain mountains, and putting those mountains in is really helpful. But the most important part is this description. So what are we interested in? Well, we'd like a little bit of general information about the day out, snow conditions, where the snow levels started, did you use crampon and ice axe, etc. And then what's really key for us is a route description. So it can be just a point-to-point description, but the key information is that we could take a map if we don't know the area and just trace out your route on a map to help us decide if it's a quality day out or not. And then this person here has also added a sort of an added bonus of the distance covered, the ascent, and how many people were in the team. The bottom box here is an auto-populated box, so you don't need to worry about that. That will happen automatically. Ideally, that information is in D-log, so a digital entry. But you can, if you have sort of historic copies and things of add in files. So this would be uploaded to the files section in D-log, and we'll find that, don't worry. Please make sure that it's clearly labeled, winter walking or winter quality mountain days. Certainly if you have more than a few files added into the files section. And the information that we require is exactly the same that we've had on the previous slide here. So it's the same information we required, and it needs to be typed so that we can read it. So whether it's a Word document or a spreadsheet, it's the same information required, and it's going to be typed, not handwritten. So there we go, 3 areas covered. The stages, the 6 steps to register for the Winter Mountain Leader, a little bit of information around the quality mountain days, and then a little bit of housekeeping around the digital logbook entries. Hopefully that's helped. If you have any further questions, then a few places to look. First of all, the mountain training website. and on there is the Winter Mountain Leader page. It has a host of different bits of information and questions, well, frequently asked questions page as well. And then also on that page, you'll be able to download the most recent Winter Mountain Leader Handbook, which has a host of information, not just about the syllabus, but the registration process and quality mountain days. If once you've looked at those two areas and you've looked at them thoroughly and you still can't find an answer to your question, then you're welcome to email us at scotland@mountain-training.org and we'll do our very best to help. Like I say, hopefully that was helpful, and we hope you enjoy getting out and about in the winter mountains and when it comes around, your winter mountain leader training. Thanks very much.